welcome to another special episode of the Family Beast Pod. My name is Jake, and here I'm with Dan Szy, a friend from years ago when we both lived in Missouri. You still live in Missouri, but not me anymore. So, Dan, why don't you introduce yourself to anyone who's watching or listening?
Yeah, my name is Dan. I've really enjoyed knowing Jake for probably almost a decade now. And I live in New Franklin, Missouri, go to church in Columbia, Missouri. But I'm originally from the East Coast near Philadelphia. And my Phillies fandom has been something that's stuck with me over the long term, even as I've been living here in the Midwest these last 12 years.
Yeah, I think we'll get to this. Let's start off with it, because I think in the messages we exchanged, you said you were a Royals fan before you were a Phillies fan. So how did that happen?
Yeah, there's a really funny full circle that I had actually forgotten about until just a few years ago, but it really has come full circle. When I was a kid, and I was 6 when the Royals won their first World Series in '85. And in my town in eastern Pennsylvania, or the next town over where I had a lot of family and where our family went to church, it was the hometown of one of their coaches on their coaching staff, a fellow named Jimmy Schaefer, who had played for the Cards in the 60s, but by the 80s, he was on the Royals coaching staff. I think he was a hitting coach or base coach. And I distinctly remember this thing that my family and some church friends took me out to in that fall of '85. It was a hero's welcome for this guy coming back to his hometown. He flew in one evening on a chopper and landed in a supermarket parking lot, and everybody had their homemade Royals banners out and everything, because this was the hometown kid made good. Yet they just won the World Series. And, I was obviously aware of the Phillies and Schmidt and Carlton and folks like that, even though I wasn't really an everyday fan. But I just decided I'm a Royals fan because, baseball kind of has that power, I think, to connect people. There's so much that's been written about fathers and sons being important to baseball. I also think geography and culture is super important to baseball. You see the way that Nike's trying to tap into that with the City Connects campaign. And I just feel like in a very small town version of that, I experienced that as a kid because I had no connection to Kansas City or the Royals except one coach who happened to be there. So I would say in those early years when I was 6 to 10 years old, I called myself a Royals fan and had a Royals birthday cake. But I think it was the summer I was 10 years old. I just started watching the Phillies a lot on TV because it was on local TV. And even though that team was miserable in last place, Schmidt decided to retire and get out because he knew it was going to be a while till it was good again. I just started being a Phillies fan at that point. But it's kind of fun now. I live 90 minutes from Kauffman Stadium, and there was one Saturday I just jumped in the car, didn't even tell anybody, decided I'm going to go to a Royals game this summer, and it's fun how that came full circle.
Yeah, so you were a Royals fan at 6. So what was the age to switch over to the local team? Was
I'd
that
say 10 or 11, probably 89 or 90. I think Schmidt retired in '89.
Yeah. It's just I think I was talking about this with someone who, again, another episode where it's a conversation, and the person I was speaking to is from Southern Illinois, and he was a Cardinals fan, but now he lives out in North Carolina, and they have no team and whatnot. He talked about, as you said, his father was a Cardinals fan, but never explained how he became a fan. So, why did you to make that transition to a Phillies fan? What was that kind of thing that made you switch?
Yeah, it's simply the fact that it was on TV all the time. And, I think NBC had a game of the week on Saturday at that point, but we didn't have cable. And if you're going to watch TV, if you're going to watch baseball on TV, it was the local team. And of course, we didn't have anything to stream at that point. So it was what was there. And it was what you could actually invest in as a kid on TV, and then on local radio too, if you're in the car or if you're playing catch outside and have the radio going. My brother and I certainly did that too, and he became a Phillies fan. So by the time they were really good for 1 year out of like a 20-year span in '93, I was on board, and I was totally sold.
Well, again, my memory but I was also 3 at the time, so maybe that changes my memory of it. But was that the year that they went to the World Series? Was that
That's
the
right.
93? All right, that didn't end well, so I won't push on that too far.
There's another funny full circle about that I could tell
Hmm,
as a fan. I got to meet Joe Carter last year. I I took a day and I visited the Negro League Baseball Museum in
yeah.
Kansas City, and Joe Carter happened to be there for a special event. He's from Kansas,
Hmm.
and I met him and took a photo with him. I said, "I forgive you for breaking my heart at age 14, winning that
Yeah.
walk World Series." But I got to go to one game in the LCS in the playoffs, and my best friend growing up against the Braves. They lost that one, and then I got to go to games 3 and 5 of the World Series against Toronto
Hmm.
that were in Philly, and saw Kurt Schilling pitch a complete game shutout in game 5. Now here's a question that's a little bit of an interesting take on where baseball's been in 30 years.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want you to guess, Jake, how many pitches Kurt Schilling threw in that complete game in the '93 World
Oh,
Series.
I mean, knowing how many they went, I'm gonna say something like 150 or something.
You nailed it, 147. You nailed it.
Wow.
Kurt Schilling
Wow.
threw
All right.
147 pitches that night. But yeah, great performance. And of course, we all think about Schilling with the D-backs and later with the Red Sox and the bloody sock and all that. But he already had a lot of postseason experience with the Phillies that year before he ever went on to those other teams.
Yeah, so I'm jumping a little bit, but let me just ask since you brought up Kurt. Hall of Fame, no Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame, what do you think? Should he have made it?
I I never saw Schilling as a Hall of Famer, even in
Mm,
most of his even with his later success. I don't know. I just feel like I feel like there's a higher bar for pitchers, and
okay.
and I never really thought about that. So if I had to say yes or no one way or another, I'd say he's a little bit short.
Okay. That's fair. Uh yeah, I mean just with 3 World Series rings, and two of the I mean, you could argue all 3 were kind of historic for each city he was involved with. Yeah, the off field stuff kind of rings a little bit of a not rings, but gives a bad taste to some of the reporters. So that was
Yeah, it does. He's
we
a loose cannon and a little crazy. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, we covered the Hall of Fame when it came out, but so I want to push the conversation that way. So you brought up you went to games, and again, that was before their new stadium, the Veteran Stadium.
hmm
So you have some experiences in Veteran Stadium. Do you want to share any of those that you see as memorable?
sure. I The first game we went to, that would have been the year I was 10, '89. For some reason, I remember that. And the, it the first thing that you noticed about Veterans Stadium and those other stadiums that were similar, those multi-purpose stadiums of that time, were just the weird aesthetics. When I think about sitting in Veterans Stadium, I'm immediately struck with a, an image in front of me of yellow and orange. Yellow seats and orange seats were in the upper deck. It was like kind of early '70s earth tones. I think was the way that they had decided uh, to 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 just decorate the stadium. And and I remember sitting in these yellow seats in the upper deck of Veterans Stadium, and it's late in the game. It's a hot day. My brother and my parents are there, and we're watching the game. And all of a sudden, I notice there are like kids just running up the stairs, a section over and 2 sections
Hmm.
over from where I was. And I'm thinking, what are these kids doing? They're suddenly like 2 dozen kids just running up the stairs. No one else is really sitting upstairs in this section. And then I see there was a one row of suites at the very top of the stadium, and for whatever reason, these folks who were sitting in the suite decided it would be fun to throw cash out the window of the suite. Like I'm seeing dollar bills just flutter down, just to watch kids underneath them scramble for the cash and see what would happen, like some bizarre game show. And I start to get out of my seat, and my dad's like, "No, you're staying right here."
Yeah.
But I'm just watching this craziness happen. I watch a plastic seat get broken, and I think there are stories about that. That Veterans Stadium kind of became legendary as this place for fan misbehavior for both baseball and football. They built the jail cell there. They built the courtroom so that they could process people through night court style if they had a drunkenness charge or something.
Wow.
And my recollection of that was just watching crazy insanity happen of people throwing cash out of a suite window just to watch what kids would do down below. It was very very strange, but I'm glad that we've got Citizens Bank Park. I've been there several times there now since 2004 when that opened, and it's beautiful. It's not a downtown ballpark. They decided to build it just right across the street from where Veteran Stadium was, which for parking and interstate access was smart, but it doesn't have the charm of a downtown ballpark. But for not being a downtown ballpark, it's a great time. I got to go to opening day 3 years ago on my 40th birthday, and I thought that would be just like the perfect 40th birthday present to myself. And my mom and my
Yeah.
brother joined me on that, and it was another great memory.
So, nostalgia of veterans and the new of Citizens Bank. Which one would you prefer to go to?
Yeah.
Just in general, I would say right now, but let's just say in general.
Yeah, I would definitely prefer to go to Citizens Bank Park. The only thing that Veterans Stadium really had going for it was noise. That
Mhm.
stadium rocked. And having been there in a playoff and World Series environment, it was as loud as an Eagles game. Same environment, and so that stadium, just the way that it was designed, was loud and probably accounted for a home field advantage in a real way that Citizens Bank Park with an open outfield just doesn't do. But other than that, it's just for the ballpark baseball experience. It can't beat the
Yeah.
present for what it is.
So, selfish question, just because I'm curious, but
Yeah,
let's. I'm trying to think of a nice way to say it, but Philadelphia fans are not received well
that's a good way
overall.
to say it. I love that. That's perfect.
They're not received well. Um, what do you think about that? The kind of the nation as a whole kind of has this
Yeah.
idea of Phillies fans. Do you kind of agree with that somewhat, or do you have some kind of pushback?
I get this all the time. I get this like I would not. I get church people being like, "I would not have pegged you as an Eagles fan or a Phillies fan." I guess that's
Yeah,
okay. I guess that's a kind like backhanded compliment. But
yeah, very, very
you
much.
know, I always make a note of when something happens. Like if there's some incident in some other city where stuff gets thrown on the field, or fans just are unruly, it always I always just make a note of it. Yeah, interesting how that doesn't seem to play into the bad rap
Yeah.
that everyone might have for Boston or DC. I mean, the worst fight I've ever seen at a ballpark was in Camden Yards.
Mm,
But I, I think Philadelphia and Boston's a little bit like this too. There's this inferiority complex with New York,
mm,
and I think actually the image of being kind of scrappy and obnoxious actually is something that uh, some people from Philadelphia area kind of run on and don't really mind feeding that
mm,
reputation. I grew up about an hour north, so I wasn't even really in the immediate Philadelphia suburbs, even though that was the media market and what friends and family would be into. Uh, but it's there are a lot of idiot drunken sports fans everywhere, and that
right,
is just
right.
that is just true. So, like Philly, I think decides to wear it a little bit just because it does something uh, to kind of foster a certain civic pride. But
Mm.
I don't think there's anything distinct or unusually depraved about us.
Yeah, I feel like the drunken fans, as a regularly attendee, you could
Mm-hmm.
say that's a very commonplace thing, um,
Yeah.
and that doesn't get talked about as much. Um, yeah, so no, just want to get your take on that, just simply because I never get to fully ask that question.
Yeah.
kind of keep in mind. But again, you talked about growing up as a Philly fan, and not just Phillies, but all Philadelphia sports. But of the Phillies, who was that one player that was your favorite growing up as a kid?
Hmm. Hmm.
When you made that switch.
Yeah, there were so many figures on that '93 team that were really fun to watch, and I, simply from a baseball perspective, Lenny Dykstra was probably my favorite to
Hmm.
watch play. He was a center fielder. He was a runner-up to Bonds for MVP that year. But he already had a lot of and again, we talked about Schilling with off the field stuff. Dykstra already had a lot of off the field baggage as a player that people knew a little bit about, but it only got worse. That's only gotten worse for him too. I love watching Dykstra and Kruk and Darren Dalton on that team. Those were all guys who, again, they just had an attitude. They had this macho swagger to them. So yeah, as a 14-year-old kid, everyone just I love those guys, and everybody just loved that whole lineup.
If you could just remind me, who was the lefty reliever who gave up that home run to Carter? Who was that?
That was Mitch Williams, Cub
Right.
before Philly, and then
Everyone's a Cub. Everyone has that kind of mark. Um,
right.
the the funny thing is, someone like there was supposedly a trade that was going to happen with Randy Johnson at one point to the Cubs in the early 90s. So
Oh wow.
everyone has some ties to the Cubs. So, I mean, Buckner has ties, all that. So, I mean, you just be like, oh, yeah, of course they were. But yeah, no, just I forgot his name. So that was back then, 93, 14 years old. Now, as you see this current team, who's
Hmm.
that favorite play, or maybe just that play you enjoy watching? Who's that player right now?
Uh, it's got to be Harper, and it's like the easy answer, but it's really a true
Hmm.
answer. I feel like just in my interest being reinvigorated here from a distance where I've got to pay for the MLB package that I do to really get into it day to day. Like
Yeah.
2019, when I saw them go out and spend the money to bring in Harper, showed me, okay, this is a big market team that's thinking like a big market team again. They're ready to go to be a top 5 payroll, and he's performed. I think he's lived up to it. I think he's worth the money. I think the fact that they've been able to bring on other free agents since then has been attributable to that. And so I've loved watching him play, and I think it's kind of it would be great to see him make the playoffs this year, which I think they will. And I think he just embodies. He's a super skilled hitter, and fun to watch that way. But he also just for me embodies. Pardon my cat. He also just embodies what this time can be, where we get back to being a postseason contender.
Yeah. You know, you literally answered multiple questions of mine regarding Bryce Harper. So that's
We can
fine.
talk
That's you jump right to it. That's totally
about it.
fine. So
Okay.
let me jump to that a little bit. So
Yeah.
when you saw Bryce Harper, let me just attack this season. Bryce Harper went down with the broken right thumb,
Mm.
and they said like his throwing elbow, he has an injury, can't play right field. So he's a DH. What are your immediate thoughts when you see a kind of a star player like Bryce Harper go down or not be able to perform in every way he can? What's your initial thought?
Yeah. I was pretty pessimistic.
Hmm.
I think last year he was hit by a pitch and he missed some time, and they really fell apart during that time. But they didn't fall apart this year. With
Yeah.
Rob Thompson coming on in early May, it's the, the big change seems to be that he has been willing to play the younger players. They moved out Diddy Gregorius. They moved in Bryson Stott. They moved out Adubel Herrera. They moved in Matt Vierling. And so Phillies, someone someone started using the word daycare. I don't know if it was someone on the team, but I see it now all over like Phillies Twitter. Whenever one of these young guys does well, it's like hashtag daycare. The Phillies daycare is at it again, and the
Yeah.
young guys are doing well. So the young guys have just picked it up, and the chemistry seems there with the manager and the clubhouse. So yeah, I was really pessimistic, but they did really well when he was on the IL, and hopefully we can keep this lead here. We've got a couple of games for the last wild card spot here in September.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. As a Cubs fan, when I saw that, I mean, my natural inclination is to be like, "Oh, it's over." So when I saw that, I was like, I mean, all right, good luck next year.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a couple of things I want to bring up is that now they have started to sign a lot of bigger names, but also they do have that young talent. I want to talk about the players they brought in, especially this last off season, and that just to name a few, Schwarber and Castellanos.
Mhm.
Were those, looking back at those moves now, were those the right moves, or would you prefer not having that hindsight to look back? Would you rather let them spend the money elsewhere?
I think they've been. I think they're the right moves. We also shored up the bullpen, and that's been important to the way that we've collapsed kind of some of the over the past couple of years down the stretch. But yeah, I think those are the right moves. The Phillies are paying the luxury tax now for the first time this year.
Right.
Uh, Also, it just goes back to what I say that this is a big market team that needs to think like a big market team. Ownership has extremely deep pockets. The local TV deal that the Phillies have is one of the best. The Philadelphia TV market, even though the city and the metro size has fallen to maybe eighth or 10th nationally behind some of the other
Mm.
Sunbelt places like Houston or Phoenix, that for reasons of like TV signals that I don't understand, the Philadelphia TV market is still the number 4 in the country behind New York, LA, and Chicago. Now, it's a significant distance behind Chicago, but fact is the Philadelphia sports market dollar, it's the only market in MLB that it's the biggest market in MLB with only one team.
Right.
It's the only market in the country, biggest market in the country that doesn't have multiple teams in at least one sport. So there's there's deep pockets there because of the media rights, and and I think it's the right move to go after those guys, and they filled holes, and JT Realmuto the year before,
Yeah.
um, he's got a 5.1 WAR this year, amazing catcher relative to the market for catchers in this game, and yeah, they opened up the bank for him, but totally worth it in my opinion.
Again, selfish question, not planned at all. But you mentioned JT. I am probably if not one of the bigger stands for Wilson Contreras
Okay.
overall. Maybe not in the second half slump he's kind of hit, but separate thing. So when you see a player kind of like Contreras take that, or that All Star start, and JT, correct me, JT didn't make the All Star team this year.
He did not this year. No, I don't think so. No, it was only.
So yeah, so with that being said, do you think JT Realmuto does not get the credit or the acclamation or the credit? Yeah, just the credit he deserves to be kind of one of if not the top catcher in baseball.
Could be, yeah, yeah. I think he's playing for the Marlins and now for the Phillies. Yeah, I don't know if he's had the national spotlight
Yeah,
uh, yet, but I would guess he's underrated. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, he'll start for the World Baseball Classic in
yeah,
March, so
yeah,
he'll get plenty of eyes
yep.
this time
That'll be
from
good.
around the world. So that'd be good. And Harper, I don't know if Harper is going to be healthy enough to play right field with his arm. But
I wonder about that too. Yeah, I don't. I think that'd be fine if he was there for moral support, but we'll see.
I mean, or just if he is the consistent DH, or just if he comes off the bench, it's not a bad
Yeah,
option.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but you mentioned this move, and again, before we start recording, I had this kind of question because the Phillies did a move that almost kind of gives you a death sentence, kind of, or to me at least, gives a death sentence for a season, and that's firing your manager halfway, if not even before half the year. So
Yeah.
they decided to do that very early on. You said May, I forgot the date, but
Yeah, it was right around the end of May, like week of Memorial Day. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So was that the right? Obviously, now looking at it during the wild card, you'd be like, "Oh, it's the right move," of course. But when it happened, again, was your idea pessimistic, or was it like, "Let's see"?
I was more optimistic about that.
Hmm.
I think in my mind, a lot of fans' minds, Girardi had worn out his welcome, uh, and I don't know that I had in mind that we really needed to make those moves to the younger the younger guys. But it was clear to me that the team was stuck and not going anywhere, and so I welcomed that, and hopefully Thompson becomes the full time guy. I think he still has the interim tag officially,
Yeah,
but even if they miss the playoffs here, there's no reason not to bring him back.
you said Dreddy wore out his welcome. Why is that?
Uh, I don't know. I don't think we saw the same like game management issues that we saw
Hmm.
with Gabe Kapler as a young manager that's just sort of drove Phillies fans bonkers. Uh, but there was no heart.
Hmm.
It didn't seem like the team was playing strong. It was just that proverbial uh, attitude and heart issue that seemed to be really missing, and that seems to be really much improved.
Yeah. Uh, Last question about the current team, and that is I'm going to. I feel like I'm gonna mess up the name, but I want to try it. So Alec Bohm, is it Bohm or Baum?
It's Bohm. You got it. Yeah,
Oh man, I even looked it up, and I was like, I'm wrong still.
you got
So
it. Well done.
Alec Bohm was struggling, even got booed in Philly, and kind of had a one of those viral
He
interview
really did.
moments where so, but then since then, he's hitting around 300. He has good power numbers. He's not playing as bad defensively at third base.
He's really worked on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is your? Is he the kind of young piece, cornerstone piece that you could say is going to help the team moving forward, or is it like you said, Bryce? Like, stop.
I I've been really encouraged by Bohm. The guy seems like he's really intense. You know,
Mm,
I remember that '93 team. They had a third baseman named Dave Hollins, and his nickname was Head, and Head stood for
mm,
head case. The guy was up in his head. He was super intense, and I you see that with Alec Bohm. He's like he's hitting himself in the head if he's making a bad play in the dugout. There's this like intensity that is uh, coming from a good desire to succeed and excel, but is obviously not always externalized in a healthy way. You know, if he can get those kind of issues put together, I think he could be really strong. And yeah, he has had a great turnaround this year. Yeah, I think we'll see. I think there's some good pitching prospects in the high A and double A. I haven't really, I don't really follow the system that much as a lot of fans do. I couldn't tell you who some of the top prospect names are, but I think I think we're in a good place here that we can make a nice run for a few years. Expanded playoffs, that's positive, and if you can get in, who knows what can happen.
Yeah. So, what is your thought with the Phillies? You said you think they make the playoffs this year.
Mm-hmm.
What's your expectation for the team this year in the playoffs?
So I think the Phils are going to go as far as they can until they meet the Dodgers and the Mets. I think we can take anybody else in the playoffs. I think nobody's stopping the Dodgers. Period for the World Series. It's too deep. But the Mets have the Phillies number crazy this year. I think they won. They played all their games. I think they won 13 or 14 of them out of
Yeah.
19. So they just don't match up, and it's just bad. But I think there's a good chance if we're the sixth seed and the Cardinals hold on to the Central, there's a really
Yeah.
good chance of the 6-3 wild card series being in St. Louis, and I'm going to do everything I can to get over there.
Yeah, that would benefit you quite a bit.
It would be fun.
Um, and next year, with the schedule changes,
Yeah,
the Phillies will either be playing here in Kansas City or St. Louis. At least, I'm gonna guess at least one team will be. There'll be at least one series that you can possibly go see. So that'll be good.
yeah. The last time that the Phillies came through Kansas City, which was I think it was 2019. They put together a road trip where it was a St. Louis Kansas City road trip, and I went to a game in both
Hmm.
towns. So
Wow.
I'd love to see MLB do that again for my selfish purposes.
Yes, yeah, for you that'd be really good. I'm not sure for Kansas City that'd be great to see the Phillies as much. But yes, that'd be fun.
Yeah,
Um,
they're turning it around.
all
Bobby
right,
Witt Jr.
so
one player to watch.
yeah, so I do. So there's a hypothetical question I'm asking everyone,
Hmm.
and this was spurred on by honestly. As I look back on it, it was spurred on by in the war in Ukraine, oddly enough,
Hmm.
and the conversation was between Cubs fans and was, what if our ownership did X, Y, and Z? Like, will that not make you a fan of the Cubs, or temporarily, or maybe ever? Kind of
That's really
what?
interesting.
So the question that kind of expands from that is there, and if there is, what would be either that one thing or that genre of things that would make you not a Phillies fan temporarily, or
Yeah,
if it was bad enough ever again, what would be the one thing or things that would
yeah,
have to happen?
that's really interesting from a Cubs perspective with an ownership that's politically engaged. So that's really
Yeah,
interesting. I'd love to come back to that and hear your answer
yeah,
too. But I thought about this a little bit as someone who was a casual fan of Penn State football, but uh,
mm, yeah,
not a ride or die fan. But I watched that growing up too, and that program obviously was destroyed by scandalous crime and sin, uh, and it was interesting because that program and that style and that coach were so revered for their style, their old fashioned morality, and it
right,
ended up being such hypocrisy. So I remember thinking at that time that scandal broke. Yeah, maybe at least in my casual deciding to watch Penn State versus an SEC game on a Saturday afternoon, I was just
right,
making a different decision after that. So yeah, sports is sports, and sports is part of real life. And if we're not thinking about the real life issues of justice and crime and sin, then we've taken sports too far. And if we say that like a sports team would have an ultimate loyalty on us that would be bigger than any of those things, then obviously it's gotten out of shape. So yeah, I don't know what that would be, but I'd certainly uh, keep that idea open that something could change in
yeah,
my interest as a fan, or my sense of loyalty to the team. The
yeah,
most likely situation that I don't think would happen in Philadelphia because of the economic factors that we already talked about. With the team picking up and moving to another town,
mm,
it would be hard for me to imagine sustaining the same level of interest if that happened with my team, because it was a team that you know comes from the home area that I came from, and that's my reason for it. So
right,
I can imagine that if if the Nashville Phillies ever happened for some strange reason, I'd probably be a lot less on board. But I can't imagine for the economic reasons something like that ever happening. Did you and your friends ever come to a conclusion about the Cubs?
Yeah, so the conversation continues. So I will say that there's a resolution, but I will say that especially the Cubs ownership is kind of, it's not diverse, but they have differing opinions just politically. Of course, with the governor in Nebraska and their ties
Yeah.
to
Yep.
especially the Trump organization and the campaign, but also within the ownership group, there's ties to the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton. Um, so politically, it's kind of hard unless, and this was something that was brought up in another conversation, was that if the Cubs on either side became kind of the Cubs were used as a fundraising arm,
Hmm.
like they were leveraging the team itself to raise money or to give money to anything that any any side of that, or just any political move, it would have to be weighed. But my stance, I don't think I've said particular is the genre of kind of what you're alluding to with Penn State is kind of the genre of morality when it comes to decision making and the structure of a team.
Hmm.
So a choice that someone makes, like let's just say it's an one person in ownership has their morality crisis. And that's a different thing than the effect of the whole team to me. The structure of a team, how they treat their employees, and how they are publicly using their kind of funds to, yes, it could be breaking laws or the morality surrounding that could give me temporary halt on that.
Hmm.
A permanent thing, yeah, as you said, moving out of town, which again the Cubs would never do. Um, but moving out of town, or honestly, if there was a really radical change when it comes to just overall treatment of human beings, their fans, their players, their anyone who's involved with that, that would give me reason to contemplate. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't say there's a thing per se, one thing. I'd say there's a genre of things that would make me be like, give me time to reflect. Because
Yeah.
as you said, sports, I even had a conversation with a friend this week who said, sports is a conduit to conversation and relationship. It's not the end all be all.
I like that.
So if you're watching or listening, I'm sorry, but sports is not the thing.
Hmm.
It does not dictate much else besides just entertainment value, which is I think where it should be. But when it crosses that line of like I just can't align myself with what's happening or where it's going, give me time to reflect on that. And I could see myself moving on. I just don't see anything per se, but
Yeah.
you never know.
Now here's another hypothetical I can't imagine, but could the Cubs exist without Wrigley Field? The Bears are moving to the suburbs.
Oh,
If they decided, and I know they renovated it just now and everything, but it, would Cubs fans just abandon ship if they decided to tear down Wrigley Field and start over in the suburbs?
it's a good question because I think there's always that conversation of Wrigley and possibly having a lakefront view, not like
Hmm.
San Fran or anything like that. But there was a time when they wanted to move closer to the lake,
Oh well.
still be on the north side, and still and kind of have with our building now, which is kind of a neighborhood, just for the Cubs fans.
Mm.
I don't. Do I think it would continue? Yes, I think it's ingrained. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't think fans would be. I don't think hardcore fans would be as excited for the overall atmosphere of it. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think. I mean, as long as there's beer in the outfield, people will go.
As long as you have those snakes of beer cups in the bleachers, it'll work for folks, right?
Man, the fact that that gets on Sports Center, but not like anything else, is just. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, can we stop a little bit?
I get it. I get it. Like I said, I get it.
Um, but no, I don't see them moving. But
Mm.
also, I saw something recently where someone was like, "You're not," and we're going to football for a second. I'm not a big football fan, so I'm not the one to ask about this. But the
Sure.
Bears potentially going to Arlington Heights. One guy said recently that you're not really a Bears fan if you're not at least on board with this idea. And I'm like, all right, then I'm not a Bears fan. So if you have that opinion and like their stadium, whatever the atmosphere is important, then you can stop. That's okay. It's just I don't think the Cubs will, unless again something structurally with the stadium is like a huge issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and again, they're putting so much money around that place that it'd be like uh, putting in an investment that you're just walking away from. So,
Yeah. I can't
um,
imagine it for the next 50 years now, but yeah.
yeah. So I don't know, but we talked about you talked about the Phillies in the playoffs. You talked about if they go up against the Mets or the Dodgers, but I mean, at some point, if they make it past the first round, if they make it, and if they make it past the first round, gotta say if they will play either one of those two teams. Is the World Series champion this year going to come out of the NL, or if not, who's going to be the World Series champion this year?
I I think the Dodgers are unstoppable.
Mm,
Both pitching and their lineup are so deep. I don't think I'll cheer for them. I always cheer in the postseason for some whatever team has like not been in it for a while, you know. But so I'll be on board with the Orioles and the AL if they can get back in it, uh, or if Milwaukee ever does well. If they, if they would end up passing the Phillies, I wouldn't mind. I'd jump on that bandwagon. But I'll cheer for the Phillies, and then I'll just expect the Dodgers to win it.
okay. So, I think there was something with that. I've gotten, with the conversations I've had, people have chosen an NL East team to win.
Mm.
Either one. They've chosen the Mets or Braves, really, to win the World Series this year. Just think, genuine question for the future of the Phillies. Do you think, with all the talent and the money that, especially the money the Mets are spending and the young talent the Braves are really signing on to really early, what is your hope in future just as a Phillies fan? Kind of just as a team. Do you see them busting through and getting that division at some point in the future?
It's a tough division. I hope so. I think just getting back into the postseason at all as a wild card is something that would just thrill the fan base right now.
Right.
Um, and but yeah, it's a tough division, and it's going to be at least if we're in it, it's going to be at least a three-way race for the foreseeable future. So yeah, it's a tough draw. Maybe there will be some realignment at some point, and hopefully, if there is, they don't stick us together with the Yankees and the Red Sox at the same time. That could happen too. But it's yeah, it's a tough spot. And but the nature of short postseason series is if you can make it in, you've got a good chance. So if we can remain competitive here the way we have over these past June, July, August, September, 3.5 months, that's a way to go for next year too.
Yeah. So again, you tell me. I saw recently that as far as the postseason appearances, the Phillies have the second longest drought
Oh yeah,
currently. So it's the Mariners 2001, their historic year. But how many years has it been since the Phillies made it?
it'll be 11. It was 2011, so this will be
Yeah.
11 years. Yep. Yeah, it's a drought, and I kind of feel like Phillies fans have a little bit of that cynicism that maybe you as Cubs fans share a little bit, where
Yeah.
it's easy to be pessimistic, and this being the first franchise to 10,000 losses for us was part of it, and now we've got this postseason drought is part of it too. So we'll see if we can pick off one goal at a time and get back in the dance here.
Yeah, well, in fairness, 10,000 losses, but then very shortly after, you got 10,000 wins.
Now we're on the
So
10,000 win side. That's right. Yeah.
yeah, so there you go.
So it happens when you're on since 1883.
Yeah. Well, when people ask me again, I'm trying not to make a question about me, but
I'll go for it. It's your
peop
podcast.
yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's just shared podcast.
It is.
But
It is.
the
It's not my
but no, I would say that that's confident no. But as a Cubs fan, I always to kind of make a lighthearted comment to people. I've always said being a Cubs fan has taught me just perseverance, and that's if that's anything. They never win, and I get to be perseverant through it and see it through all the way to the end. Do you kind of see that as a just overall Philadelphia fan?
I do, and I've got a quote I'm going to read you on this.
Got
James
you got
Michener,
quotes. I'm not saying anything original.
James Michener was an author, a novelist, and they asked him about this in the 1970s. And he said, "Since 1915, I have been cheering for the Phillies. And if that doesn't take character, what does? In such circumstances, it is traditional to say, I supported my team in good years and bad. There were no good years. I cheered in bad years and worse."
I
So
mean, that can transition to a Chicago Cubs fan very easily. So
you could
yeah,
roll with that too, yeah.
yeah. Um, it'll be. I'll say if the Phillies make it, I have a reason to root for the Phillies this year. If
Get on
make
board.
it to
The
playoffs.
bandwagon is wide open for you.
I mean, I think people will notice that I'm talking to people and of different teams and people I have connections to because if these teams make the playoffs, there's always a reason to root for them. I mean, now I'm out in the LA area and I don't want to say anything bad about the Dodgers because it's like a cult of sorts. But yeah, I won't say anything further. Yeah, but just having a reason to root for teams that you never really know any person connected to it. It's always important to get to know kind of their history and where they're at right now. So I appreciate you even talking about the Phillies, in the past and present, and again, if they make it. Especially if they're against the Cardinals, I'm rooting for the Phillies.
Right, exactly. Totally.
All right,
so much fun to chat about.
Yeah, so again, thank you for talking with me today. And this has been another special episode of the Fantasy Base podcast. My name is Jake, and this is Dan. Say bye, Dan. We're going to head out.
Thanks, Jake. See y'all.
Hey, I'm Eden. Thanks for watching this episode of my dad's podcast. Check out the links in the description to follow the podcast on TikTok, Instagram, and the other social media. Make sure you like and subscribe and hit the bell to let you know when there's a new episode. Thanks for watching or listening.